Hello and welcome to the Night Feed. I'm your host, Charlotte, here to keep you company during, let's face it, one of the toughest parts of being a new parent, the Night Feed. Tonight's unpaid sponsor is Mum Brain. Burnout, illness, or whatever it is, I don't know, but my head is as foggy as anything at the moment. And I know we all talk about mum brain like it's this really common thing, but sometimes it hits me a lot harder than others. And I'll tell you why I know this, because I went to the pharmacy the other day to pick up some antibiotics for my baby. And I got home with said antibiotics and had a right meltdown. I was like, oh, there's no leaflet in here with the dosage. There's no prescription with the bottle. I was looking on the bag. You know how sometimes they print it on the label, like 1 dose, 5 ml, 3 times a day, whatever. I couldn't find it anywhere. I was in a right mood. I was like, oh, I don't believe this. This is incompetence. I'm going to ring them. So I rang them twice, no answer. Then I rang them again. I was like, this is just, really annoyed me so much. And it's not that big a deal because just gone back. But I was like enraged by this. Anyway, went back to the pharmacy and I said, hi, I collected this before for my baby, but there's no dosage on it. Like, I don't know what to give him. And she was like, oh, it's just on the bottle, love. I was like, of course it's on the bottle. It's always on the bottle, on a label, isn't it? There it was, 5 ml, 3 times a day. I was having a right meltdown. And I have always just checked the bottle in the past when I get medication. So I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm blaming it on mum brain. Great excuse. I have to tell you about this dream I had. And I know you're going to roll your eyes like nobody wants to hear your dream. You know when someone says to you, oh, I had this wild dream, and they start telling you and you're like, what? But anyway, this dream was significant, okay? I dreamt that I was friends with Taylor Swift. And I've never desired to be friends with Taylor Swift necessarily, but I was invited to stay in the suite that she was staying with her mum in the Plaza in New York. So as a friend, I go to this suite and it wasn't in the Plaza. It wasn't like Home Alone vibes. It was skyscraper, floor to ceiling windows, overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge and the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty. My New York friends tell me that my geography is completely off here because it was overlooking everything. And in this penthouse or this suite of this hotel, coffee was on tap, food was on tap. We were having a great time. We were going out. I was getting ready for a night out, perusing dresses for like 2 hours, doing my makeup. We went out, we met Snoop Dogg. Never thought about meeting Snoop Dogg in my life, but he was great. Then we went back and I was just getting to the bit where, bearing in mind this is a dream, Travis Kelce walks in, Taylor's fiance, and he says, right, girls, we're sending you on a surprise trip tomorrow to Ibiza for Taylor's hen. It's going to be amazing. Hen is bachelorette to our American friends. And then mid-dream, my subconscious mum brain wakes and's like, whoa, hell to the no, you're not going to Ibiza at the drop of a hat, you're breastfeeding. So mid-dream, I go to my parents' house, who live 20 minutes away in this dream, and they were looking after the babies. And they were like, yeah, they've been great, don't you worry, you should go to Ibiza. And then my mum said to me, have you considered stopping breastfeeding now? You know, he's 1. Maybe it's a good time to think about stopping like you did with the girls. And just as we were about to then board the plane to Ibiza, I got woken up by said baby going for the boob. It was like, back to reality. Not that I don't like my reality, but the feeling I had in that dream of being completely autonomous, putting my makeup on at my leisure. I felt like I was 15 again, you know, getting dressed on my own clock, living this life in that apartment where nobody needed me. I was just me again. I was chilling. I was going to Ibiza the next day on a private jet. And I think it's like my subconscious brain that isn't getting a minute because it's all go when you have babies and children, isn't it? It's like 24/7, unless your partner comes in and says, go and have a bath, or go and have 10 minutes, or, even when you sleep, when you have a new baby, you're on call. And it just made me laugh when I woke up where my mind went. Like, I was allowed to go to New York for a week and then go to Ibiza. Maybe it is time to stop breastfeeding soon. I don't know. But it just made me laugh because lately, with illnesses and various other things going on, it has been nonstop, like 24/7. But yeah, you know how it is. I just thought I'd have to share that with you because it's funny how the subconscious brain works, isn't it? Like, no, back down to earth. You're not going to Ibiza. But yeah, I thought I'd share it. Tonight, I wanted to talk about something that I've been pondering ever since I listened to a podcast where the listener emailed in to say that her mother-in-law was overly excited for the new baby she was having, and the listener was dreading her just dropping in and being, in her words, too involved. And whilst I understood the listener's concerns to an extent, it made me really think about the village and how maybe like 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was relatively common for a mother-in-law or a mum to just drop in and drop by and do the dishes, tidy up, help with the baby. And it made me wonder about, has there been a shift lately? And has this shift been down to COVID? Because I had my first baby in the peak of the pandemic. And prior to the pandemic, I'd always envisioned having a baby and there being lots of visitors, there being people around. COVID hit and it was like, whoa, limited visitors, like really sanitized, really different experience. And I keep hearing people talk about how motherhood, when they talk about motherhood, it's almost like it's an inconvenience, people coming around, and I don't want these people to come around. I don't want a baby shower. I don't want this, I don't want that. I just want to keep it really simple. I want to nest with my baby. And I was questioning, like, have we always wanted that deep down? Or back in the day, were we really happy to receive the help? And I just wondered if COVID killed the village. There's been this shift from us expecting people to be there to not wanting visitors. And as this listener said, to an extent, dreading over-involvement. And the interesting thing is, it's not just COVID happened and people stayed away. It's that the pandemic kind of quietly rewired early motherhood culture in a way, I think. And I don't think it's still fully reset it. Like before COVID, as I said, there was often more expectation that people would drop in, they'd hold the baby, they'd help out, they'd pop around with food, they'd sit in while, you had a meltdown because you were so exhausted. Sometimes it was overwhelming, yes, but I think there was still a sense of a village to an extent. And then during the pandemic, new mums gave birth alone or with restrictions. Health visitors kind of disappeared or went virtual. I had physio for my firstborn that was virtual. Baby groups stopped. Grandparents had to keep distance. Everyone became like hyper aware of illness. Mums were told to isolate to protect the baby. Don't touch the baby became normal. People stopped casually helping each other in a way. And honestly, I think a lot of those habits stuck. I think partly because the parents wanted them to, because they were like under this new normal of ultra hygienic, clean, like keep visitors to a minimum, but also because the visitors maybe felt a little like they didn't want to be overbearing or, overstep the mark, and there's this kind of weird thing going on, I think. And the unintended consequence of, maybe guests being like, I don't want to intrude, tell me if you need anything. We know visitors are stressful. We should leave them alone to bond. And the unintended consequence is that many mums are nesting completely alone. And there's this strange contradiction now where mums are simultaneously more connected online than ever, but physically more isolated than previous generations. You can have 400 people watching your Instagram stories while still sitting alone at 2 a.m. with a baby and no one physically there. And another interesting take on this is how COVID intensified anxiety around germs and safety. Like lots of parents now, they panic about visitors kissing babies, they worry about illnesses constantly, they avoid groups in the newborn stage, they feel guilty if they expose the baby to too much. This might not be everyone, like you might be listening to this being like, that's not me, But I think there is a lot more health anxiety than there was. And some caution is understandable, but collectively, did that make motherhood lonelier? And I think for many people, yeah. I think I had my first in peak of the pandemic, then I had my second in 2022, which, yes, a lot of the pandemic was coming to, it was slowing down. We kind of there was the vaccinations, COVID was being coped with a lot better. Even though I had her in 2022, I was still cautious going to baby groups. I was still cautious taking her to things, especially when she was very new, like early newborn. And it's just interesting how it affected us. And I think the other thing, I suppose, is that the village requires inconvenience. Real villages are messy. People come over when your house isn't tidy. Aunties hold the baby wrong, maybe. Grandparents do things differently. Friends see you crying. And I think COVID pushed us all towards a controlled, sanitised, isolated parenting. We see these houses online that are pristine, and I think that's the expectation mums now have. So the thought of a friend popping in when your house is upside down, it's like, oh, no, it's fine, we'll do it tomorrow. And it's almost hindered that village. Because if you think like back in the 70s, 60s, 80s even the 90s, like I remember being as a kid running in and out the house, and it was always just kind of, fun, and there was never this kind of OCD-ness level of clean. It was always just like living in a normal house, and that's what I kind of almost aspire to now, is living in a normal house. And if my mum and dad come round and the house isn't tip top, it doesn't concern me because I know there's no judgment there. And I think that's what you need in a village, is people to come and go and you to not feel judged, or like you should have more in control. You should be more in control of things because you've got a newborn baby or you've got young children. Having complete control of that situation is virtually impossible. And I think there's a lot of mums as well that now need to think that they've got to earn help, or rather than expect it. There's also the fact that a lot of us live further away from family. Like, I'm not just around the corner from my parents. I'm a 25-minute drive down the motorway, which means that we can't see each other every day because it's obviously not practical. Whereas families in other cultures live together, generations live together, and they live in that kind of zone where they're all kind of pitching in and helping, and it's a different kind of experience. And I don't know, did modern motherhood become safer, more informed, more hygienic? But it's also far more isolated, I think. Sometimes I wonder whether COVID didn't just remove the village temporarily. I wonder if it changed our expectations of motherhood completely. Like, everyone got used to doing it with less people around, and we became so focused on protecting babies from germs that maybe we start protecting mothers from loneliness. I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? And there's definitely been a shift with the dynamic. And it all sparked, like I said, from that listener writing in me like, oh, I don't want my mother-in-law to drop by unannounced. I don't want it to be too involved. I don't want baby shower. And I thought, when I was listening to it, I thought, oh, well, I get that you don't want intrusion. But at the same time, when you have that baby, it was the first time she hadn't had a baby before. If your mother-in-law's coming round with a cooked meal and can hold the baby while you shower, you'll be so glad of that. And I just think maybe as mums, we need to give in to the fact that the house isn't going to be perfect and people might just pop in, and that's okay. And it's kind of bringing that culture back, I think, a little bit more, so that modern mothers get that village still. And I do think COVID has a huge part to play in that, but I'd love to hear your views on it. Do you think the village started slipping away pre-COVID because of other shifts in like the way we live now, the way we work, how things are different? Or do you think COVID did play a huge role? Drop me an email, thenightfeedpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, on to the emails. First one is a listener response, which I love. And it says, "Hi, Charlotte. I was listening to your last episode on the plane while travelling back from Greece with my 6-month-old. I heard the listener who wrote in asking for travel tips, and I just had to reply, as this holiday has been a sharp learning curve. We had such a lovely time overall, but I definitely came home feeling like I'd earned some kind of parenting medal. So I thought I'd share a few things that genuinely helped us while travelling with a baby, because some of them weren't that obvious before we went." Okay, these are great. First one, put one complete spare outfit for yourself in the bag. Everyone tells you to pack spare baby clothes. Nobody tells you that you might end up covered in baby sick, leaked pouch yogurt, or an explosive nappy halfway over Europe with nowhere to change properly. I packed a lightweight black t-shirt and leggings in a packing cube at the last minute and genuinely felt like my past self had performed an act of kindness for my future self. Next one says, pack a nappy change emergency pouch. So not the whole changing bag, just a little zip pouch with one nappy, wipes and a disposable mat and a spare vest. There's nothing more humbling than trying to drag an entire overstuffed baby bag into a tiny airplane toilet while the turbulence is happening. Next says, take antibacterial wipes for the high chairs. Nobody warned me about this one, but honestly, the restaurant high chairs in Greece were questionable. I ended up wiping them down constantly because they'd either been sat in by 50 sticky toddlers before us or stood outside all day with flies on. Tiny thing, but made me feel so much calmer. Next one is ignore wake windows for a week. This was the biggest lesson for me. I spent the first 2 days obsessing over naps and timings and trying to recreate home. Then I realised we were in Greece, not the military training. Once I relaxed and accepted that she'd sleep differently, the whole holiday became enjoyable again. Bring familiar bedsheet from home. Oh, this is a good one. This sounds strange, but we put our baby's cot sheet from home over the hotel travel cot mattress, and I swear it helped her settle so much better because it smelled familiar. Hotels are so overstimulating for babies, like new rooms, sounds, aircon humming, and that tiny bit of home seemed to comfort her. That's a really good one that I would never have thought of. Next one says, if you can, take out a travel blind. This helped us a lot with daytime naps. We have a Tommy Tippy one, which we got off Amazon. It's suckers which stick to the window, and it did help to dim the room while baby napped. Also, one final thing for anyone nervous about travelling with a baby. People are so much kinder than social media makes you think. I was dreading judgment if she cried on the plane, but honestly, people smiled, helped us fold the pram, and even play peekaboo with her while we waited for bags. Anyway, thank you for making me feel less alone during the 3am feeds while jet lagged. Love, a very tired but very proud mum. Love that. My favourite thing, as I always say, is when a listener helps another listener. And so to our listener last week who wrote in about travel tips, I hope you catch this. Some really good tips there about like the spare leggings and top. I think it's a really good one. And obviously the bed sheet from home, the familiar smell, because being abroad is overstimulating for adults, let alone babies. So I think they're really useful tips, and I hope that helps. Next one says, recommendations for bottles suitable for breastfed newborns to avoid nipple confusion. Hi Charlotte, I wondered if I could ask for recommendations because I'm driving myself slightly mad researching bottles for my newborn. I'm exclusively breastfeeding at the moment, but I'd really like my partner to be able to do one feed a day eventually, so I can occasionally shower without feeling like I'm in a hostage negotiation. The problem is I've completely fallen down the rabbit hole of nipple confusion. Every bottle claims to be the most breast-like, and every comment section says the exact opposite. Some people swear by Lanciner, other people say Mam. Then someone else says their baby rejected every bottle apart from one ridiculous expensive brand imported from another continent. I think what's making it harder is that breastfeeding is finally going well after a rough start, and I'm terrified of disrupting it. My baby's only 5 weeks old and feeds constantly, so the thought of suddenly refusing the breast because of a bottle honestly gives me anxiety. I'd love to know if you tried other bottles whilst breastfeeding, which ones work, whether combi feeding brought on issues, and whether nipple confusion is as common as social media makes it seem. Also, nobody warns you how emotional it feels handing your baby to someone else for a feed the first time. Part of me desperately wants the break, and the other part of me feels weirdly guilty about it. Would love some honest advice. Love, a very milk-stained first-time mum. Firstly, thank you for writing in. What I'm going to say to begin with is you've got a 5-week-old. Now, you said they're feeding constantly, and I want you to know that that is completely normal, unless they're not gaining weight or you can in your gut something's wrong. I remember around that stage the cluster feeding was intense, feeling like they fed every hour or more than every hour. And I think at that stage you are pretty much strapped to a baby. So going for a shower can feel like a quick dash run before they start screaming again because they want the milk. And it can feel really, really overwhelming. And I want you to know that that is completely normal. It's nothing you're doing wrong. It's nothing that your baby's doing wrong. Cluster feeding in the early weeks and months is intense. I always just went with what the baby wanted. I didn't do it on a timer. I didn't do it scheduled. I just fed when they wanted it because I did exclusively breastfeed like you at the moment. And I want you to know that that also gets a lot easier. They start to feed less and less. So obviously before they start weaning, they still need feeding quite regularly, but it's not like the cluster feeding in the early days. So you will be able to nip to the shops for an hour or two. I would say in a month or so, you will be able to nip out for an hour here and there, which I know isn't that long, but it gets easier, is what I'm saying with the breastfeeding. Like now, my baby's 1. He can go a while without feeding. When they start eating, you can go a whole afternoon now and he doesn't really need it, but then sometimes he wants it. My milk's definitely gone down quite a bit. So I just wanted to share that with you because it sounds like it's feeling overwhelming and it's completely normal for it to feel like that. The bottle situation I have been through. My first baby, we did a bit of combi feeding with the small bottles you can buy pre-made from the supermarket because I was having an awful time with breastfeeding in the first 2 weeks. I've talked about it on a previous episode, but my first 2 weeks of feeding my firstborn were rough. And it was my mum who said, go and get some of them bottles, let Jason do a feed, and that really helped. So she had those little bottles once a day at about 11 p.m. and that really helped. But then she stopped wanting them about, I want to say about 6 weeks in. She was like off them. So that stopped working for us. We went back to breastfeeding, but by then it was less intense and it didn't hurt me. So I was okay. Because the first 2 weeks I was in agony, but then the pain went. We did then try it about 4 months with a bottle. At first I tried the Tommy Tippy bottle, which I think it's called like Nipple like or something. I don't know. I'm sorry, let me just get a drink because my throat's going. And then I read that the MAM bottles that are self-sterilising, that they were better. And she did take water from them once she was weaning. She wouldn't really drink milk other than breast milk, my first. So we never really cracked the bottle with her. With my second, I don't think we ever tried her with the bottle. At first, I was like, I'm going to give her the bottle straight off the bat so that we can do a bit of combi feeding if we need to. And I just didn't. I just went straight in with exclusive breastfeeding. Same with my little boy. I've never really needed to, like if I was being a bridesmaid for somebody, for example, I know that was coming up, I tried to get them on the bottle a little bit so that I could have a few hours where I didn't have to panic about them feeding. So don't really have the best advice myself. Like, I can't tell you categorically this brand of bottle works. What I did find though, out of all the ones I tried for all the babies combined, when I have here and there, is the MAM bottle, which you can get on Amazon, with a slow teat. So you can get different speeds of teat with them. And I think it's to replicate the boob, because obviously the boob flow is a lot slower. So they have to work a lot harder. And what I found when I gave my first a bottle straight off the bat, she was like gagging and choking because it was coming out so fast. They don't have to really pull the milk out. So my advice would be to try and find a slow flow teat for the MAM bottles. That's what worked best for me. I like them because they sterilise in the microwave very easily. I would say if you're going to try combi feeding, probably the sooner the better, so that they can get used to the bottle as well. Because I know when I've left it for down like 4 to 5 months with my first, she just wouldn't go near the bottle at that stage. She was like, nah. So I probably would try it sooner or later. The whole nipple confusion thing, I've only experienced that where they don't want the bottle, where they're like, that's not a nipple, I don't want it. I've never experienced it where they get more attached to the bottle and they don't want the breast. Some people combi feed really, really, really well, and it works great for them. So if anybody is listening to this who is currently combi feeding, please email in and let us know when you introduced the bottle, how you did it, how often, and if it has affected breastfeeding for this listener, because I think it'd be really, really helpful, because unfortunately I can't give you really good combi feeding advice, because like I said, we only did it for a small amount of time with my first, with those tiny little bottles that she seemed to like for a period and then went off. But other than that, for giving them water and topping up when they're weaning and giving them a bottle at night after they finish breastfeeding. So my second liked a bottle of water of a night. If she ever woke up to hydrate her when I stopped breastfeeding, that was always the MAM bottles. So they've been my favourite. You'll be glad to know they're not extortionate. They are very affordable on Amazon. That's my best advice. But if anyone else has any tips on this, please drop me an email, because I'd love to hear from you. Next tonight is what's trending. One thing I keep seeing online this week is people discussing Steven Bartlett saying that 3 glasses of wine ruined his entire week. And honestly, I think we need to calm down a bit. Because on the one hand, I do think a lot of us notice this more in our 30s, and especially after kids. Like, before children, you could go out, drink, sleep until 10 a.m, recover with a cheeky Big Mac, all is well. But now, one slightly chaotic evening, a really late night, and the tiredness feels like, I don't know, psychological warfare. And then when you're already sleep deprived, overstimulated, and running on caffeine, alcohol absolutely hits differently. But I think we've entered this strange era of over-optimizing ourselves, where every tiny pleasure now comes with a podcast explaining why it's secretly ruining your life. Coffee spikes cortisol, wine destroys sleep, sugar ages you, screens fry your dopamine. Apparently existing as a human woman now requires the discipline of an Olympic athlete. It's just nuts out there. And I think as mums especially, we need to be careful not to turn our lives into one endless, self-improvement project. Because yes, protecting your mental health matters and looking after your body matters. But so does sitting in a garden with your friends, drinking a cold glass of white wine, laughing about your children smearing hummus on your new rug. I think it's absolutely necessary. I think we need pleasure and enjoyment. Not every moment of joy needs to be medically optimized. And Bartlett not, banging on that he had 3 glasses of wine and it wrecked his week. I think it's just like OTT. I think it's like, God, don't take that enjoyment away as well. We're not all over here getting hammered. But I don't think 3 glasses of wine is enough to ruin a week. Maybe it is for him. I'm not a big drinker. If I knocked back 3 glasses of wine, I wouldn't feel great the next morning. But I like a glass of wine, maybe 2. I feel great. I think, the 2 drinks in, rule is great. When you're happy drunk, you're chill, you're not going to wake up with a mad hangover. And social media's made us hyper aware of every tiny thing our bodies do, to the point where we almost fear like normal human experiences now. And sometimes the stress of trying to become this like perfectly regulated person is probably like worse for us than actual, just having that glass of Sauvignon Blanc. Have it, enjoy it. Don't have Bartlett screaming down your neck that you're going to have a ruined week. I just think we just need that treat. We're tired, need a treat. It keeps us sane. So my self-care tip tonight is have the glass of wine, have the treat. I feel like when you're constantly on the go and that you need it 24/7, when you do get that hour a night, indulging feels bloody good. Cheeky glass of whiskey and coke watching Clarkson's Farm. Yes, please. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be having whiskey and coke, purely because we haven't got any in. But don't get me wrong, still breastfeeding. I'm not drinking a ton at the moment. But the odd glass here and there is such an enjoyment. And I think when, like me, you've been either pregnant or breastfeeding since 2020, a glass of wine or a whiskey and coke feels like the biggest treat, because you're not really meant to have it very much. But I'm all for a treat. I'm all for it. So have the glass of wine. Cheers to you. And cheers to not over optimizing every bloody thing. Thanks for listening tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please drop me an email with your thoughts on anything we've talked about tonight, from whether COVID has taken away the village, any more travel tips, or to the lovely listener who messaged asking about combi feeding. Please drop me a message. I always reply to all, even if I don't read your email out on the podcast. Keep them coming in. Love hearing from you. And I wish you all a relaxing, hopefully restful night ahead. Good night.